What is going on, everyone? It is college football talk. I am your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is week 4 recap, where we're going to go through all the biggest action that happened over the weekend. There was a lot that happened and transpired. We're going to talk about it all. Tennessee rolls, Michigan saves their season, and Oklahoma State, what happened? We're going to go around the country. A lot of other big action happened. That's not any headlining stuff, but will get talked about today. And we're going to go through some winners and losers. We'll get to the best bets stuff Thursday, but 3-1 on the weekend. So we made a nice jump back from that crappy weekend the week prior. So 3-1 weekend. If you're on them, you're on them. We look to continue to roll into the week 5 slate, but we won't be handing out any of that till Thursday's episode. But we're here today to talk about all the action that happened this past Saturday. Hard to believe we're already almost halfway through the college football season, but listen, this thing flies by. We just got to enjoy every little moment of it. Take a quick sip right there. But before we get going, as we always do, make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. We hit the 100 subscriber mark last week. Got to continue to grow that now. Next stop, 200. So continue to grow. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. So you won't miss anything. You don't want to miss anything. I'm around all year long talking college football. So make sure you're subscribed there. If you are subscribed already, continue to watch, continue to like the videos, and share it with anyone that is a passion for college football or just college sports in general. Tell them to subscribe because it means a lot for me and it helps build the channel to where we know we can get to. Also, if you want to hit me up on socials, at DeLauder Hunter, I've seen a nice tick in the Twitter following, so that's awesome there. And then on Instagram, hunter.delauder83. Hit me up on the socials. We can chat. And forgot Spotify. If you're listening on podcast, Spotify, College Football Talk there, hit the follow button there. All right. Without further ado, we're going to get right into this thing because we've got a lot to talk about. Tennessee rolls Oklahoma this past weekend. It was the first conference game for both teams. Oklahoma's first conference game since joining the SEC. Tennessee hit the road. I forget the number, but they hadn't had won a ranked road game in a long time. It was well past, I believe, 10 games. So they were coming in with just trying to get that monkey off their back. They do so in a big way. Don't let the score deceive you. It was not even close to being a game. Probably halfway through the first quarter when Tennessee went up 12-3, you just had a feeling like this is just not going to be a night Oklahoma's going to be able to do much offensively. They got help defensively with a couple turnovers, but then immediately turned the ball back over. But the biggest thing for me, Tennessee's defense slams the door on OU's offense. And I talked about this in a article I wrote for WRUF.com. Check it out. About doing a preview on this game. Talk about how Tennessee's defense, would they be able to just kind of take over this game? Because would Oklahoma have any success doing anything? I thought Oklahoma would need to slow the game down some, run the ball, control the clock, not turn the ball over, and Jackson Arnold would need to play well because they hadn't done much to do the air. They were okay running the football, but still needed room to work there. And they were dealing with a lot of struggles on the offensive line with injuries and such. And they kind of all just kind of accumulated into one big snowball or avalanche that just wrecked them on Saturday. Tennessee's defense, through 3 quarters, held Oklahoma to 98 yards of total offense. On the 15 first down plays Oklahoma had Saturday night, 7 total yards, 3 turnovers, and a safety. Jackson Arnold was sacked Oklahoma quarterbacks were sacked 3 times, 11 tackles for loss allowed. Jackson Arnold was pulled at the end of the second quarter. That Michael Hawkins came in. He's a true freshman, so getting baptized by fire here. I thought he played well. If you're trying to compare both quarterbacks, Hawkins was the better guy. I think he's got to be the guy going forward. Arnold, 7 of 16, 54 yards. This is accumulating sack numbers, but he was negative 21 rushing yards. He was the leading rusher for Oklahoma coming into this game. And he had an interception that came right after Oklahoma had just got a turnover from Tennessee. And then Hawkins comes in, struggles early, it was kind of gross the entire second half he played, but he did play well. The stats won't tell you otherwise, but like 11 of 18, 132 yards, a touchdown. But like I said, I think he has to be the guy going forward. I think they were talking about it too on the call, how the offense just kind of runs a little bit smoother through him. There's not as much, stagnant offensive consistency going on. Like it just kind of runs smoother. There's a lot more you can do with him. I think he's a better runner of the football. He has a better arm, I think. And how about now what Oklahoma did? You kind of pushed Dylan Gabriel out the door. He transfers to Oregon because Jackson Arnold's supposed to be the guy. Plays pretty decent in the bowl game last year. They lost, but like he played well. But you have these expectations like this is the guy, and he's just. I just don't think he's the guy. Like he just doesn't seem to have it, and it stinks. But this happens where you have a hyped up guy who's a star in high school, plays in a bowl game or two, in another game maybe, just looks really good, and then he has a whole offseason to be the guy. All you hear is the chit chat about like how he's going to be the guy going forward. The offense is going to build around him. He's going to lead him to the promised land, and he just doesn't pan out. And it is what it is. It happens. He's not the first one to fall for this, but I mean, Oklahoma fans got to be a little sick to their stomach knowing what they could have had. Now looking at what they have, it's an open quarterback race now. I think Brett Venables talked about that in his presser after the game. How we have to figure out now who's going to be playing quarterback going forward. Like I said, I think it has to be Hawkins. Why not? Your expectations weren't high to begin with going into the year. I mean, 8-4 was probably the ceiling, but they get Auburn this week, who's in a bigger quarterback conundrum. We'll talk about that later, but I think you got to roll with Hawkins here. I just think Arnold, you've seen what he has to offer these first 3 games now. The offense isn't running smooth. It's not functioning. There's no consistency. They're not scoring points. They're not throwing the ball well. Let Hawkins go and see what happens. Worst thing is you go back to Arnold and maybe he's better. But I think you got to let the freshman roll. Oklahoma, like I said, it was just a poor night offensively. They only had 222 yards, 36 total yards rushing, and they were held 3 of 15 on third down. But I think that I think that's more of an indicator of how well Tennessee is defensively. I mean, they were living in the backfield of Oklahoma's offense on Saturday. I mean, constant pressure, completely shut down the run, held them in check offensively through the air. They forced 3 turnovers, just an all-out onslaught. I mean, you felt like the game felt like, okay, Oklahoma might be able to get back in this. They got the fumble. They had first and goal from like 8 or 9. Arnold has a little keeper. Tennessee forces a fumble. And then from that moment on, it was like, okay, well, here it is. I mean, every time Tennessee was hit with some sort of adversity defensively, they overcame it to a T. Like it was just picture perfect all over the field. Keenan Peely, Arian Carter, I mean, they were all over the field making plays. We talked about them in the preview, like how these were the guys like Oklahoma was going to have to deal with. And Oklahoma's offensive line, they entered the game with injuries, and they just succumbed to those injuries because these linebackers, Tennessee, we talk about how fast and physical they are, all over the field. All over the field making plays. They were constantly just wrecking havoc. And this is a team now, we talked about how balanced they are. Well, you saw why. And offensively, it wasn't even the prettiest game for Tennessee because, I'm trying to find here, they have stuff to clean up themselves. Like, it was not the cleanest game offensively. I think they only had about 345 total yards of offense. Amaliaba played decent. The stats won't say how well he played. I thought he was making really good plays, using his feet. When he had to get out of the pocket, his eyes were constantly downfield. They weren't all over the place. Like, there was no panic. He stays calm and collective. 13 to 21, 194 yards, threw a touchdown, lost 2 fumbles. Offensive line could play a little bit better. That's a solid defense for Oklahoma. And Oklahoma defensively did their job, we talked about how they were going to have to force turnovers. They were going to have to try to make things uncomfortable for Maliaba. They did for the most part. But again, it's a combination of getting worn down because your offense can't sustain drives. Plus, when your offense keeps turning the football over and you just kind of get put in a bad spot defensively, you're going to give up some points. And that's just kind of what happened tonight. I mean, they held Dylan Sampson in check for the most part, 24 carries, 92 yards. Did not score another touchdown, puts him at 10 now this season. But like I said, I mean, just OU couldn't take advantage of the mistakes that Tennessee had. And when you're playing a team like Tennessee, you have to be able to take advantage of the mistakes and capitalize. And they were not able to. And that's ultimately what killed them in this game. I think Tennessee winning, not the blowout fashion we've kind of been accustomed to seeing them, winning it kind of ugly, not the cleanest game for them, and doing it on the road shows how well of a team this can be. I think a team that wants to win a title or has aspirations of doing so needs to be able to show this trait. You saw it with Georgia last week, winning on the road at Kentucky, how gross and ugly that was. But you find a way to win. That's what the good teams do. Bama does it for years. Georgia's been doing it for years now lately. Ohio State will do it. Tennessee, this was a kind of game where you're on the road. It's Josh Heupel's return. You know that crowd's going to be electric, juiced up. Game day's there. Everything's could be against you in this game. And if you slip up early in that game, now you're in deep trouble. They never let it happen. They never gave Oklahoma a chance. They took the crowd out of it. And I thought it was a great game for Tennessee. As far as Oklahoma goes, like I said, you're going to have to figure out what to do at quarterback. They got to get those guys healthy on the O-line. I thought the defense is outstanding. But now you got to find that quarterback who's going to be able to just kind of carry this offense afloat and not keep them sinking underwater, because that's just kind of where this offense is leaning towards. And the schedule doesn't get any easier for them. They still got to play Texas, still got to play Bama. So you're going to be playing a lot better teams down the road as well. Tennessee is no slouch. And now you got to play even better teams. Are they going to be able to score enough points? I think they go to Auburn this weekend. This is going to be a big test because now you have two teams. We'll talk about that in the preview, but you have two teams now struggling mightily. Doesn't have a quarterback to go to. Who's going to step up? That's going to be a big question for me. All right, moving on. Michigan outlast USC in a back and forth affair, which ended up being one of the better games of the day, probably the best game of the day. 27-24. Michigan saves their season, because if they lose this, it would have been their first time since 2020 they would have lost back, or at least more than one home game. Not to mention that they would have been in deep trouble because they couldn't do anything offensively to begin with. Coming into the game, there was trying to figure out who was going to be playing quarterback. They go back to Alex Orji because Davis Warren had been struggling mightily turning the football over. So you go back to Orji, and you have questions about, are they physical enough? Are they going to be able to stop USC? Can they run the football? And they got back to Michigan football in this game. They ran the ball 46 times for 290 yards, averaged almost 7 yards a carry. Khalil Mullings led 17 carries for 159 yards. He averaged 9.4 yards a carry. He had 2 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards got in the end zone. He had 14 carries for 74 yards. If I would have told you that Alex Orji throwing the football would go 7-12 for 32 yards, do you immediately think that USC wins this game? Because if I had not watched this and I just saw that, you don't even look at the rushing yards yet. You just see that stat line first. Be like, oh my gosh, USC just completely blanked it. And I don't know how, looking at that stat, that Michigan won this game just looking at that. I mean, Michigan's leading receiver had 1 catch for 10 yards. That was Marlon Klein. I mean, credit to that O-line for Michigan being able to take over and just run the ball down USC's throat, because that's what USC, a big question I had was, would they be physical enough with that O-line, with this running game that Michigan has? And they struggled to stop the run. I mean, that's really the ultimate decider in this game, because, I mean, Michigan, the strategy wasn't complicated at all. They were just going to hand the ball off and let them go to work. And that's what they did. USC has to get more physical up front, but I think they did show that they are able to step up and compete with these big boys in the Big 12, or not Big 12, the Big 10, based off of what I saw Saturday. Yes, you got to be able to stop the run better. And that's nobody's questioning that. But what Miller Moss is able to do, really impressive stuff. 28 to 51, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns. They fell behind early in this game too, 14 to 3, and it looked like Michigan was going to run away with this. Miller Moss and that offense was able to settle back in, get a big touchdown. He did throw a costly pick six, though. Will Johnson, I think it's his second of the year anyway. But he did lose a fumble. But aside from that, like, he played really well. He got the team back in it. Woody Marks was able to run the ball well, but still, USC was held under 100 yards rushing. You got to be able to run the ball a little better. I thought they weren't able to run the ball on the outside as much as probably they wanted to. I said they should take a look at what Texas did and kind of use that as like a framework outline to beat Michigan here. They weren't able to do that effectively enough. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham got back to why they are the top defensive tackles in the country. Combined, they had 8 total tackles, 2 sacks, 5 solo tackles. Like, that's what they played to their billing. And that's what Michigan needed, because they were worn down, did not make an impact at all against Texas. They showed up Saturday. Huge game. Really big back and forth type of game. You know, tale of two halves for Michigan. They played super well in the first half. They had 10 first downs, scoring points. Second half, shut down for the most part. They only had 2 first downs the entire second half, but they were able, when they needed a drive at the end of the game, they were able to get one. And they scored. They held USC on Michigan held USC on defense on that final drive. Didn't even get them in the field goal range. So really credit to Michigan for kind of standing up and saying, with their season pretty much on the brink, because you lose that, then it's like, okay, all hope is lost here. You know, expectations probably aren't sky high anyway, at least from an outsider's perspective. But like, to win this, to get back to Michigan football and to kind of keep your season afloat now, really a big indicator of the leaders in that locker room saying, like, listen, we got to step up here. And Sherrone Moore gets a big time win in his first year, because they lose that, it's like, oh boy. Because you still got, you know, a lot bigger test later on in the year. You lose this, you're like, oh crap. But they got the win. Credit to them. I think USC is still going to be a challenger in the Big Ten. Maybe not this year. Maybe a year after. Maybe not this year, but like next year possibly. They just got to get more physical up front. I think if they can do that, they will be a contender. But that's a big if right there. So we'll see. We'll move on though to Utah holding off a late comeback from Oklahoma State. But Utah as a whole, though, defensively, they suffocated Oklahoma State. Completely shut down an offense that had been rolling the last 2 weeks. 285 yards Oklahoma State had total offense. They ran the ball for 48 total yards. They averaged 3.2 yards a carry. They only had 11 first downs. They were held to 4-15 on third downs. They turned the ball over twice. Alan Bowman, who I talked about how well he had been playing this month, struggled mightily. He got pulled temporarily before Garrett Rangel went down, so he had to come back in. So Bowman went 16 to 23, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, turned the ball over twice. Ollie Gordon, is he missing? Like, do we have the milk carton with his face on it on the missing sign? Because 11 carries for 42 yards, 3.8 yards a carry. He hasn't eclipsed more than 50 yards since week 1. He is averaging in the month of September 2.9 yards a carry. He only has 1 touchdown. It's just really weird to see, because an offensive line that's a very veteran, that you saw how successful they were running the football last year. They're just no success at all running the football. And I don't know if that's more of an indicator on defenses now just kind of playing to the run and telling Oklahoma State, okay, we're going to stack the box here. We're going to stop the run and take away your best threat in the backfield. We're going to bank on your quarterback trying to beat us. And to this point, I mean, Utah said that going in. Tell Bowman to beat us. We don't believe he can be that guy that can do it. And they were right, because they completely shut down Gordon. and they told Bowman to beat us. He didn't. He struggled all day long. It was a sloppy game, kind of a boring game that kind of went by pretty fast. But listen, credit to Utah because Cam Rising didn't play in this game. Isaac Wilson stepped in for a second start. He started the week prior. He stepped in, 17 to 29, 207 yards, threw a touchdown, turned the ball over a few times. But other than that, they had 456 total yards of offense, and they ran the ball effectively. I said they were going to have opportunities to do this. Oklahoma State stinks at stopping the run. They cannot stop the run. Arkansas ran all over them. They rushed for over 300 yards against them. Oklahoma State rushed for 249 yards. Micah Bernard had 25 carries for 182 of yards, averaged almost 8 yards a carry. And the Utah pass catchers talked about them also in the preview. Singer, Keefe, and Parks combined for 14 catches, 204 yards. They averaged 14.6 yards a catch and had a touchdown. Now, listen, Utah kind of has that inside track now, I think, in my opinion. I mean, this is why they came in to this season as the overall favorite to win this conference. Because Kyle Whittingham always has his team ready to roll. They're going to be physical. They're going to beg you to beat them. They're going to take away your biggest strength, and they're going to say, okay, find a different way to beat us. And Utah, I mean, just consistently, week in and week out, no, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, who's on the field, they just find a way to win all the time. And it's so impressive to watch each and every year. I mean, remember last year, they had Rising was out all year. They had a pig farmer and Bryce Barnes. They had Johnson playing quarterback as well. They didn't have a quarterback all last year that could really consistently play well, and they still almost ran the table and won made it to the Pac-12 title game. And defensively, like I said, they play lights out all game long. And as far as Oklahoma State goes, now you have to turn your attention now going to Manhattan, Kansas. You got to play Kansas State next week in pretty much a Big 12 elimination game because we'll talk about Kansas State later on. I mean, Kansas State got smoked on Saturday in Provo. So now you have two teams backs against the wall on both of them. I mean, can Oklahoma State figure out what to do defensively? I mean, this is a defense that plays well historically against stopping the run and limiting big chunk plays in the pass play. I mean, they can't stop the run at all. I mean, they struggle mightily stopping the run. Can't stop the run. They're giving up too many chunk plays in the air. They did force 3 turnovers, so that's good. But you're going to see better quarterback play. And then you get Avery Johnson next week, who can use his legs really effectively. He's going to be able to beat you in the run. You have Dylan Edwards in that backfield for Kansas State. I mean, will they be able to stop him? Because they couldn't against Arkansas when they kind of have a similar duo, but Quinton Jackson's on a different level right now. But Traylon Green was able to use his legs and run the football effectively. They were able to beat him in chunk plays. I'm very interested to see how Oklahoma State responds next week because this is a team that's a dark horse to win the Big 12, a dark horse playoff contender. But right now, they can't run the ball with Gordon, and they can't stop it either. So very, very concerning for me who picked them to win the Big 12. But not just that, just overall, this is an experienced group, a very veteran-led group that is just making mistakes that you don't see usually from a veteran group like this. So interested to see how they respond. Really interesting game next weekend, like I just said. So can't wait to break that one down Thursday for sure. But that's going to be it for the headliner games. We're going to bounce around the country because there was a lot of action that happened over the country. Kind of bang through these. Friday night, there was 2 really good games. Stanford went into Syracuse, walked it off on the field goal. Really impressive win there. Illinois, though, beats Nebraska in Nebraska. 2 ranked teams. I talked about this game on the preview last week. So I thought Illinois was going to have to try to make this game sloppy. They're going to try to have to run the ball effectively, and they were going to have to stop the run. I thought Nebraska that was a question I had about Nebraska too. Would they be able to stop the run, and would they be able to run the ball effectively? Because Illinois, a pretty solid run-stopping group. They were middle of the pack-ish on running the football, but I thought maybe they could have some success. But Nebraska couldn't run the ball effectively. They only had 48 yards total rushing, and Illinois ran the ball effectively, 166 yards on the ground. And Luke Altmaier talked about how consistent he'd been playing. to this point. I mean, 21-27, 215 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, very impressive to go on the road like that in a night game in Lincoln where it's always a sellout crowd. The crowd's always going bananas. And he outduels Dylan Raiola, who had been playing really good football to this point. Really impressed to see how Luke Altmaier continues to grow this season. They have a massive game also this weekend against Penn State. They were 17.5-point dogs. I think they're in Penn State too. But, I mean, hey, listen, you play turnover-free football. I don't care who you're playing. You will always have a chance to win. When you're not turning the football over and you're just playing good, sound football, I don't care if you're beating them in regulation or in overtime, how this game went in overtime. Very impressive by Illinois. And how about the Illinois defense? Overtime. I'm looking at the overtime, and I tweeted this. The overtime period, they score immediately, like 2 plays they scored. They forced 3 sacks in that overtime. I mean, completely just ambushed, attacked Nebraska in the backfield overtime. And then, obviously, Nebraska didn't do anything. They lost. They move on. But Nebraska continues to struggle now against these ranked teams in one-score games. There is a stat out there, and I can't remember it, and it really bugs me. But Nebraska, just like I said, they continue to struggle. Are they going to be able to get over this hump soon? They go on the road now, first time. I believe they play Purdue. So they should bounce back because Purdue stinks. But you never know. You never know. This will be a first-time freshman quarterback going on the road. You never know. We saw Maliava do it well. But can Raiola respond as well? After a loss, going on the road now. We'll see. All right, Clemson, though. Drums NC State, 59-35. Clemson scored 6 of their first 7 drives. They scored a touchdown or a field goal. And Clemson, alive and well offensively. I mean, they are explosivity everywhere. Between the App State game and the NC State game, I mean, they are scoring at will. And maybe it's a token to how bad these teams are that they're playing, because NC State, who thought would be a middle-of-the-pack-ish dark horse pick to be contending in the ACC, stinks. App State's not good. I mean, they were a dark horse to win the Group of 5 lottery ticket to go to the playoff. They can't win at all. I mean, they got drummed at home against South Alabama. Clemson, I mean, maybe it's just an indictment on who they're playing. But listen, the schedule for Clemson, their next 4 games before their next real team, which would be Louisville, and that's coming off at Clemson bye week, and you get to host Louisville. So a clear advantage there. But here's their next games before that. Stanford, at Florida State, at Wake Forest, and Virginia. I mean, that's 4 wins right there. They legitimately don't play another team until Louisville. And then outside of that, there is no other ranked teams on their schedule. I mean, they may not have to be challenged again until the ACC title game, which looks like it right now would be Clemson-Miami, which would be a heck of a game. But they're playing good ball on defense, and now they're scoring points to figure out to use Cade Klubnik effectively. They're spreading the ball out. This is now the 3rd week in a row you have a different receiver leading the group in catches and receiving yards. So they're spreading it out. It's not just one guy that's doing all the work. So that's really impressive to see, because how bad they played week 1. And maybe that's just a token of how well Georgia is. I mean, they got just curb stomped in Atlanta. 34-3. They got smoked by the Dogs. And maybe that's just how well Georgia is this year, because Georgia stopped them from doing anything they wanted to do. The biggest play they had, it was crossing the midfield, and then they couldn't do anything. So, I mean, maybe that's just how well Georgia is, and maybe not much on Clemson, but Clemson finding another gear here, which is really impressive to see, because I really loved how well they responded after that game, and to now see where they are. And listen, I had my doubts after that game, but now looking at the schedule and how well they've been playing, I mean, this is a team that will probably be in Charlotte playing for the ACC title game again. And credit to Dabo, who took a lot of criticism. Same thing with Garrett Riley, Klubnik, and that entire offense. They have found a way to respond, rebound, and now they're rolling. All right. What am I doing on here? Okay. WVU comes back, beats Kansas 32-28. Both teams kind of had their backs against the wall in this game. It was a must-win for both. West Virginia trailed 28-17 with 5.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they come back, they score 2 times, and credit to that offense who, it is what it is, but they come back, they show a lot of fight, knowing that their season's on the line here, kind of, and it's the first Big 12 game for both. Don't want to lose, especially Kansas. Kansas losing ugly at home last weekend to UNLV. In the week prior to Illinois. I mean, this is Kansas' third loss already. I mean, this is a team that was supposed to contend for the Big 12. They're 1-3 now. Jalen Daniels looks out of sync. Just, I don't know what it is. Maybe that's how big of an effect Koldnicki leaving to go to Penn State was on this team, because they just don't look the same offensively. And West Virginia just kind of finds a way. They let last week slip between their fingers. I have no idea how they lost against Pitt. They blew a 10-point lead with under 4 minutes to go in the game. They found a way to do that, but they were able to respond like that. Really impressive, and it quiets the Neil Brown haters for another week. I'm still sure they hate him, but quiets them down a little bit. All right, Missouri survives Vanderbilt in double overtime. 30-27. Vanderbilt missed I want to say it was a 37-yarder. Just completely missed it wide left. That would have forced triple overtime. And this is a scrappy Vanderbilt group. You saw them beat Virginia Tech already this year. They gave Missouri fits all they could handle on Saturday. And I don't know, maybe if that's just a better team for Vanderbilt with Pavia playing quarterback. Like, they just look like a different group offensively. Like, they're not getting just bullied into the ground. They're fighting. They're showing fight. They're showing response. When they get pushed down, they're getting back up. And maybe that's a credit to Vanderbilt, but Missouri's looked sloppy the last 2 weeks now. They just look sluggish. They fell behind early in this game, kind of like how they did last week at Boston College. And I don't know, maybe if they've just been sleepwalking to this point, if maybe they can wake up. But is there concern for Missouri? I mean, they still have to go. They still have to play Texas A&M. They still got to play Alabama. I mean, there's games on the schedule that if they fall behind like this early, they will not win. I'm just flat out saying that right now. I thought they were able to hold their own late in the game. Obviously, just winning the game is what you want to do. So they found a way to win, which is good. But man, they just look sloppy. They look gross. They fell out of the top 10 after this game. So maybe it's a wake-up call. Like, listen, guys, we can't be continuing to fall behind like this at the wheel and just kind of squeak one out every week. I mean, they were 17-point favorites last week against Boston College and fell behind early in that game and had to hold off, all Boston College could throw at them late in that game to hold on. Same thing in this one. I mean, if this isn't a wake-up call to go to double overtime against Vanderbilt, I don't know what is. So maybe they wake up. Vanderbilt continues to be scrappy, and hopefully soon they break that. They get the over on that win total I think they had this year, which I believe is 2.5. So I think they do have Alcorn State coming up. So, hey, that's the game right there. That's the game. All right, moving on. Miami rolls USF 50-15. And listen, credit to this is what you see from championship teams. They go in and take care of business against teams that they were supposed to beat. They were challenged early by USF. USF struggles in the red zone killed them in this game. The end of the second half, how that went, second quarter, with how USF executed offensively, really was the ball game. I thought Golich made a few poor coaching decisions in that game, especially at the end of the half, how they managed that possession. I mean, they had Miami on the ropes a little bit right there, driving in the red zone, and they just kind of stalled out with some poor play calls, in my opinion. There was a 3rd down and 2. They try to get fancy with it. They have a tank as a quarterback in Byron Brown. Why not use him? Get 2 yards. If not, you get a yard, you go for it on 4th, and then you do the same thing. They didn't. They got cute. Didn't do anything. They forced a field goal, or they attempted a field goal, and I believe he missed. So you went empty on that. And then Miami it was all Canes second half. Cam Ward looks like the best quarterback right now in the country. 28-34, 404 yards, 3 touchdowns. Doesn't miss a beat. He threw a pick early in the game, but other than that, it was smooth sailing for the for the senior quarterback. And listen, Miami, again, another one of these teams. They get Virginia Tech Friday night. Maybe first challenge, but again, Virginia Tech, how poorly they've been playing to start the year. I mean, I don't see for them stopping Miami. Moving on, though. LSU beats UCLA 34-17. UCLA challenging the Tigers in Death Valley. For most of this game was tied at half, 17-17. It was closer than it needed to be. Nussmeier, another solid day, though, 352 yards, 3 touchdowns. He went 32-44. All that's fun. Defensively, I'm still having my questions with this team. They lose now Harold Perkins for the year. He got injured late in the second half. ACL injury is what it looks like, and he's supposed to be out for the year. So you lose your best player on defense. You're still having questions, and you haven't really even gotten into conference play yet. So you had the South Carolina game you won. You won this game, which is good. But man, now you're down. You're shorthanded enough, and now you're down your best player. So we'll see how they respond. But a win's a win there. Florida beats Mississippi State 45-28. The Gators get back in the win column after dropping 2 of their first 3. Mertz and Lagway looked efficient. The offense looked pretty solid for the most part, 45 points they put up. Mertz showed why he should be the starter. I said it last week. Thought he played well enough to be the starter and the full-time starter. They're still going back and forth in this rinky-dink stuff. I don't think it's effective enough. Pick a guy and run with him. Mertz, though, 19-21, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did also run for a touchdown, so there was that. Lagway, 7-7, 76 yards. But the defense for Florida still stinks. You let a terrible Mississippi State team put up almost 500 yards total offense. They ran the ball for 240 yards on you. You got to figure that out because you get a bye week this week, and then you get KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey coming in. And then after that, you get a talented running back duo in the backfield for Kentucky coming in before you even hit the back half of your schedule. So, which includes teams like Georgia who can run the ball effectively, who can Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. Well, Florida State, not really, but like you still have teams that will be able to run the ball. I'm very interested in these next 2 games. Get them both back at home. But if they can't stop the run, they will lose one of the 2 games. So I guarantee you they will lose one of the 2 games, if not both of them. Because if you can't stop the run, your defense is going to get worn down and tired. You're going to see what Kentucky did against Georgia, except they're going to cash in on points and score. And will your offense be able to play well enough? Because that's a talented Kentucky front that put Georgia in 4 quarters of hell, and that's a veteran group on defense for them. UCF, that's a stout defense as well. They're not going to be as dominant as some of these other SEC teams they're going to play, but it's a team that will hold you in check. So a very interesting test for UCF this upcoming week. They get Colorado coming at home, coming to Orlando, to the bounce house. We'll see if they can keep that offense in check. Speaking of poor defenses, though, James Madison goes into Chapel Hill, beats North Carolina 70-50. They put 70 on the Tar Heels. JMU scored 53 points in the first half. Both teams had over 600 yards total offense. But North Carolina, what are we doing? What are we doing? They do this every single year. They're doing all right for the most part, and then they lose a game they shouldn't ever lose at home. Last year it was Virginia. This year, James Madison. Listen, James Madison, credit to them. But, this is a team that is replacing their head coach and most of their players that left to go to Indiana with them. We have to win this game if you're North Carolina. And again, the defense, which has killed them year in and year out, continues to be a massive flaw for Mac Brown in this group. So we'll see if they can respond. And credit to James Madison going in, taking that check that I know North Carolina wrote for them and saying, thanks, we'll take that, and we'll drop 70 on you. Arkansas beats Auburn 24-21 as a slop fest to begin with. There were 7 total turnovers in the game. Auburn turned the football over 5 times. Auburn quarterbacks combined for 20 completions on, let's do the math here, 35 attempts. So not efficient there. Hank Brown started this game. He went 7-13 for 72 yards and 3 interceptions. Thorne came in relief, 213 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns, did have a pick. Who's going to play quarterback for Auburn? The coach is throwing him under the bus. They don't have he said in his press game, we don't have a quarterback that can make completions to our team, but he can make them to the other team. And paraphrasing that, but like, we don't have a quarterback who can play well enough right now. Can't run the ball. We can't stop turning the football over. I mean, who's going to step up for Auburn? And now your coach is throwing shots at you. You have Bo Wallace on Twitter talking about how, like, this is a guy that will do everything he can to win, but he will never, like, be there for you. And so when you have former quarterbacks who you had pretty good success with kind of throwing shots at you, now that's like, this is just the perfect recipe for internal conflict in that locker room to kind of kill a season. And everyone that said they needed a quarterback in the offseason, in the portal, Freeze didn't do it. They stuck with Thorne. I was never blown away from Thorne last year. You stick with him. He has a really good game week 1 against a really bad opponent, but now you've seen him so far this year. I mean, it's just, they can't stop turning the football over. And they haven't even gotten into SEC play yet, except for this game Saturday. And Arkansas, how about the Piggies? 3-1 now. You should be 4-0 if you didn't let the Oklahoma State game slide by you. And listen, they get A&M now this weekend. Or this weekend. It's either this weekend, I forget. I got to double check the dates. But, hey, Taylor Green, Jaquindon Jackson running the ball. Bobby Petrino's calling plays. I mean, this offense is rolling now. They can kind of limit the turnovers. I mean, they only had 2. And they went into one of the tougher places to play in all the land to get a win for a team that had virtually no expectations this year. Listen, Arkansas, let's see if they can keep rolling here. But Auburn, I don't know what you do. You get Oklahoma this weekend at home before you got to go to Georgia. So we'll see if they can find a way to win that one. I just think now, if you're struggling with Arkansas's defense, I don't know how you're going to do against Oklahoma's defense, who kept a pretty solid, I'd say, Tennessee offense in check for the most of the game. So we'll see. But I have no hope for Auburn the rest of the year. BYU stuns Kansas State 38-9. The boys out in Provo, the Cougars, making some noise. They're undefeated still. Hey, just saying, 4-0. And you take out a Kansas State team that had second best odds to win the conference. This is all you need to know for the game. First half ended in fashion of BYU field goal, BYU scoop and score, Kansas State interception, BYU touchdown, end of the half. Third quarter starts. Kansas State throws a pick, BYU touchdown, and then a BYU 93-yard punt return. If you haven't seen that clip yet, go back and watch it. It is one of the best punt return touchdowns you will ever see in any level of college football, any level of football for that matter. One of the best plays you will ever see. It was awesome. He botched it. He fumbled it. Goes behind him. He picks it up and just runs all the way around. And then he had to review it to see if he threw the ball out of his hands before he crossed the goal line. He didn't. So luckily it stood. But man, what a touchdown. And what a win for BYU. Gets the big win, stays undefeated, and starts conference play out 1-0. And finally, Colorado beats Baylor 38-31. The Baylor Bears had this team on the ropes. Colorado throws a Hail Mary at the end of the game to force overtime. Colorado scores on the first possession of the game. First possession of overtime. Baylor looks like they're about to just storm right into the end zone, and then Travis Hunter knocks the ball out as Baylor's going into the end zone. The play was reviewed. The fans stormed the field. While the play was under review, they had to get off the field, only for the refs to say, like, he did fumble it before crossing the goal line. Colorado wins. Colorado's 1-0 now in Big 12 play. They got to go to Orlando to play UCF. But how about this offense actually, it's not really how about, because it's the same offense we've seen all year from Colorado. They can't run the ball. 91 yards on the ground. Shedeur Sanders looks outstanding. 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Travis Hunter, again, playing both sides of the ball is one thing. But when you go 7 catches for 130 and then you make the game-winning stop on defense to punch the ball out and give your team a win, I mean, he's Heisman. Send him to New York now. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. He is one of the front runners for the Heisman. And if he's not on your ballot, then, what are you doing? That's going to conclude around the country. A lot of great action as always. And we're going to finalize here with winners and losers of the week. Winners of the week: Colorado, Boston College, BYU, Illinois, Miami, Tennessee, Michigan, Arkansas. And how about Rutgers stays undefeated and gets a big-time win at home against Virginia Tech. Losers of the week, FSU. You did get the win, which is good. 14 points, though, not good. Offense still looks gross. At half, it was 7-6 at half. Just letting everyone know. Oklahoma is a loser. Missouri, we got to wake up. We got to wake up. It's week 5 now of the season, Missouri. Let's wake up and start playing some football. You're playing teams now. You're not playing Murray State and whoever else you played week 1 or 2. Like, you're playing real big boy football now. Let's wake up. NC State, I don't know what to say. UNC stops giving up points. Auburn, find a quarterback. TCU, gross. Seriously, I was so high on TCU. It was our only loss this week on the best bets play. I mean, to get your ass kicked against a rival in the Iron Skillet game in Dallas, your coach got ejected against his former team. I mean, what are we doing? Can't be doing that. Gotta be better, TCU. I had better hopes for you. Memphis, 10-point favorites against Navy. We're getting smoked by the midshipmen. Come on, we gotta be better. Midshipmen, shout out the military and the armed forces, guys. Navy and Army, both undefeated. Just saying. Last time that's I believe the stat is last time that was the case going into week 5, both teams are undefeated was 1945, and let's just say both teams were big road underdogs. World War II reference right there. Anyway, Baylor is going to be the final loser of the week. To blow a game like that when your coach is already on the hot seat, not good. I think you're seeing the final chapters of the Dave Aranda experience. But I'm just saying, hear me out though. He gets fired, he will be at the top of any opening for a DC. He will be at the top of the list. I'm just saying it right now. Like I think he finds a good DC job somewhere, like that will instantaneously improve a team, whoever needs it. So, but that's going to be it for today's episode. What was that? I'm going to hit that. I'm going to get rid of this. Really good stuff as usual. Thought today's episode had good pace to it. Got through everything we wanted to, and really excited to talk about week 5. A lot of good games. Week 5 headlined by the biggest game possibly of the year. Georgia, number 2. Alabama, number 4. I cannot wait to break that game down. Really good stuff coming up there. We also have some really other good games. Kansas State, Oklahoma State, UCF, Colorado. Like, there's a lot. I haven't even looked at the rest of the board yet. So you really can't wait to talk about all that. But make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. Like I said to begin with, continue to grow the episode or grow the channel for that matter. 106 subscribers right now. Let's get to 200, guys. I know we got it in there. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. Like the videos. Give me a comment. If you guys want to see something else, if you want me to add anything to the channel or to the episodes, let me know. I love to see feedback. And if you're listening on podcast on Spotify, follow me there. College Football Talk with Hunter. Some big things in the makings for as far as new logos go, new intro. We got it in the makings. It's going to be out soon. But if you're following me on social media, awesome. If you want to, on Twitter, @DeLauderHunter, Instagram, Hunter.DeLauder83. Cannot wait to break down all the action of week 5 coming up on Thursday. But enjoy this episode. Like, subscribe. I'll see you next time.